Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Hearthstone. I am ASCII and I'm here for Nerf TV, running you through a brand new deck. This is the Map of the Wild Druid deck. This is based off of a deck I've seen Total Biscuit playing. I've seen a number of other players that are playing decks very similar. It basically works by throwing the map of the game out by using buffs on your minions to make them much harder to kill and deal more damage, so you can kill things that are a lot higher value than them, and you can also trade for multiple minions. Now we covered a deck very similar to this recently for the Paladin that all worked by sacrificing minions and upping all the HP and making them harder to kill and that kind of thing, and that worked really well. And this is the Druid version of that. It works just as effectively, and we'll run you through what is in the deck. First of all, we have two Innovates. This is a 0 cost card. It gains 2 mana crystals for this turn only, meaning you can make very big plays in the early game using this. It's a very strong card indeed. Mark of the Wild, give a minion taunt and +2/+2. Good way to buff up a creature in the early game and also obviously turn something into a taunt, which can be really useful, especially if you've made a very powerful minion. You want them to have to sack a lot of their minions into it to get through it. You can turn it into a taunt, also making it even more powerful, but then they've got to go through that taunt to get to you. Power of the Wild, give your minions +1/+1 or summon a 3/2 Panther. Now it's nice to have the option here, however summoning the 3/2 Panther should not be done under almost any circumstances. There's occasionally a moment when maybe it might be useful, but pretty much you've got this card in there for the +1/+1 across the board. That's a really strong buff for only 2 costs, especially if you manage to get quite a number of minions out in the field, and that's what this deck is very good at. Next up, Direwolf Alpha. Adjacent minions have +1 attack. Now obviously this only applies to the minion to the left and the right of the Direwolf, but it can be used to get some good trades. Fairy Dragon can't be targeted by spells or hero powers, so this minion has to have the enemy go through it. Now what you could do, for example here, is use Mark of the Wild on the Fairy Dragon. They can't use a spell, they can't use hero powers to get rid of it. That's a 5/4 and it's only 2 costs. It could be played out on turn 1 potentially. If you've got the coin and Innovate, you can Mark of the Wild a Fairy Dragon on turn 1. You've got a 5/4 that they've got to go through. They've got to kill that to actually get past it. That's not going to be easy. That's at least 2 minions they're going to have to sacrifice, possibly even 3. Very powerful card indeed. Master Swordsmith, at the end of your turn give another random friendly minion +1 attack. Now this card can be really useful or can be just buffing the wrong creatures all the time. It's a good way to throw the enemy's map out because the Master Swordsmith doesn't generally get focused. Because it's not really that powerful, it will generally stay on the board for a good couple turns unless they get some sort of AoE or something. It's generally not going to be the focus and it can buff stuff up very effectively. Now do keep in mind though, it won't buff up itself, it will only buff up other minions on your side, so if it's played out by itself it's pretty much useless. We should also note just quickly that we only have 1 Direwolf and 1 of the Master Swordsmith in this deck. They're not particularly effective cards and that's why we've gone with that and instead chosen to have some more powerful cards in there. So next up we have Mark of Nature. This gives a minion +4 attack or +4 health and taunt. Good way to turn a minion into a taunt if you need that defense, or up the damage or something to dish out some serious power. Now it's really powerful if you combine it with things like the Stormwind Champion, Ancient of War or Druid of the Claw later in the game, but also it can buff up these low-cost creatures so you can trade them out for something more powerful. Savage Roar gives all your characters +2 attack this turn. Keep in mind this also applies to your hero because it's characters not just minions, so your hero is going to get +2 attack as well. And this is a really good way to make a very high damage play all of a sudden. If you've got a few minions out in the field, they're not going to see it coming. You play Savage Roar and suddenly, say you've got 3 minions on the field, that's 8 extra damage you're going to get. 2 from each minion and 2 from yourself, and that can be really effective to finish an enemy hero off. Now, the Raging Worgen is one of my favourite cards for getting good trades. It's a 3/3 for only 3 costs, so it's played out fairly early in the game, and around that time there's probably going to be a 1 damage or a 2 damage minion out in the field. Now you can use the Raging Worgen to attack into that, very often kill it, and then the Wind Fury is going to proc, which means you can attack a second time that turn, so you can then deal 4 damage. So you can use it, for example, to kill 2 minions on the board, or kill a minion on the board and then attack into the enemy hero for some very good value. Raid Leader is our next one. All your other minions have +1 attack, so again this is a great way to throw the math of the enemy out by suddenly buffing up all your creatures and making them have to trade out a lot higher. Shattered Sun Cleric works in very much the same way. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. Now this was recently nerfed, taking its HP down a little bit to bring it a bit more in line. I think that was a fair nerf to be honest, but yeah, this card is still very effective and definitely makes its way into this deck. So next up, the Dark Iron Dwarf, give a minion +2 attack. This is one of my favourite cards in the deck. You're basically getting 10 stats for only 4 cost, really good value. The +2 attack can be used to increase the damage of one of your minions so it can trade out very well, or deal some extra damage to the enemy hero if you're in a good strong position. Defender of Argus gives adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt. Again, you can see we've got a lot of ways to give minions that don't normally have taunt with this deck, and that's really useful. Basically, it's forcing them to have to focus certain minions, and you can make it so those minions are really hard to kill. You can get them lots of HP and enough damage that they're going to have to trade out their minions completely, and you can get some really good trades. Defender of Argus is part of that plan. Druid of the Claw gets charge or +2 health and taunt. This can work either way. 4/4, 5 cost with charge, fairly reasonable, and a 4/6 with taunt. The 5 cost is fairly reasonable as well, and having the choice is really great. So, for example, you could play this out as a taunt, and then you could also use the Mark of Nature on it, and suddenly you're looking at 8/6 with taunt. That's very powerful, and you can't really argue with that at all. They're going to have to plow everything they've got into that to get through it. I mean, you could even play it out with the taunt, you've got 6 damage, and then use the Mark of Nature with the health on it, and then you're looking at 4/10. Now, that's going to take them a long time to get through it, so buffing up the HP is really useful. The Ancient of War. Choose one, taunt and +5 health or +5 attack. So you can see this theme running through most of this deck already. Again, it works in exactly the same way as the other cards. It's just getting stronger and stronger each time. That's going to come out as a 5/10, and that's really difficult to get rid of, especially on turn 7. There's not many cards that are going to be able to get rid of that, except for things like Assassinate and stuff like that. Our final card is basically the big daddy of throwing math out. It's the Stormwind Champion. It's a +1/+1 to all minions on the board, or well, all of your minions on the board. It's a really powerful card, fairly difficult to remove. I mean, you don't really generally see it getting removed in a single turn unless they've got Assassinate or something like that, but the Stormwind Champion is a really great card for this deck. So, as you can see, pretty much everything in here adds +1 attack and +1 HP in some sort of way or another. So you're going to be combining all these together to get some real high boons out of everything. You're going to have a lot of taunt minions that shouldn't normally have taunt. They're going to be buffed up very effectively, make it very difficult for the enemy to get through. Obviously, focus on making sure their damage is high enough that they're going to have to trade the minions out completely to get a kill, but also make sure they've got enough HP that they can at least trade for 2, 3, 4 minions, and then you're going to get some really great value out of this deck, and they're going to find it very hard to get through those taunt walls that you're going to be able to set up with this. So that is our Math of the Wild deck. Let us know if you give it a go, and let us know if you make any changes to it. I've been ASCII here for Nerf TV. Thank you for watching.